Hello and welcome. You're watching France 24. I'm François Picard. Coming up, it's the World This Week. Our Friday panel will weigh in on the increased militarization of the conflict in Syria and a look ahead to what the Arab League and the West will be able to negotiate when it comes to sanctions when they sit down with the Russians. Also, in the World This Week, Romney's millions. That's something that's become a talking point. And by the way, not just in the United States, the tax the rich mantra gaining traction in the French election campaign. Also this hour, the founder of the company that produced substandard silicone for breast implants charged with involuntary injury. And in business, the World Economic Forum in Davos, where the big issue this Friday is how to avoid a disorderly Greek default. We'll have more on that story with Tom Burgess-Watson. Our hour begins, though, in the newsroom. Let's say hello to Laura Baines. How are you?
Good evening to you, Francois. Here are the headlines at this hour. French combat troops are to leave Afghanistan by the end of next year. President Nicolas Sarkozy outlines the withdrawal after meeting with the Afghan leader Hamid Karzai here in Paris. Hundreds of children among the dead and detained in Syria. A new report sheds light on the extent of the crackdown as Russia reasserts it will block any efforts to oust President al-Assad. And nearly 1 in 4 people in Spain are now out of work. The jobless rate has hit a 17-year high, and young people are the worst affected. First, though, the French president has announced the timetable for a pullout from Afghanistan. Nicolas Sarkozy says combat troops will leave by the end of next year. The announcement came following talks between Sarkozy and the Afghan leader Hamid Karzai. Here in Paris, the two have called on NATO to hand over all combat operations to Afghan forces by next year. 2014 had been the date set by NATO. Now, Russia's warned the UN Security Council that it will block a resolution which calls for Syria's president to step down. The council is to vote on a draft text being worked on by Western and Arab states. It reportedly demands that Bashar al-Assad resign immediately in the wake of a 10-month crackdown. Meanwhile, a new report claims hundreds of children have been killed and detained in the conflict in Syria. The Free Syria Army, which is made up of defected soldiers, says it's working to protect civilians. They say they're in control of the town of Binish. France 24's team on the ground sent us this report.
Tell me how your lives are here. We defend ourselves, thanks to God, thanks to our weapons, and thanks to our will. But we only have small arms like AK-47s, that's all.
And what weapons do the security forces have?
They have tanks, they have heavy artillery and submachine guns. They have planes.
So how did you liberate your city then?
Thanks to God, we stayed united. That's how we resisted, with simple assault rifles.
Well, back to that announcement made this afternoon in Paris. Nicolas Sarkozy says French combat troops will start to withdraw from Afghanistan as of next year. NATO forces had pledged to stay in the country until 2014. Nicolas Sarkozy and his Afghan counterpart Hamid Karzai also calling on NATO to hand over all operations to Afghan troops by 2014. Well, Cyril Vanier is covering that story for us and joins us now from the Elysee. Cyril, the big question is whether or not this is an acceleration of the pace of withdrawal of French troops.
And you're right to be asking that question, Laura, because it's actually unclear. What we knew going into the meeting was France's commitment, along with other NATO countries, to maintain soldiers in Afghanistan until 2014. But the pullout, the gradual process of pulling soldiers out of Afghanistan has begun for France, as it has for the United States and other countries in Afghanistan already last year. France has already withdrawn some 400 soldiers. In 2012, it's going to withdraw an extra 1,000 soldiers. What Nicolas Sarkozy said today, which was not known until now, was that the decision announced was to withdraw all combat troops by the end of 2013, and then a few hundred soldiers, the exact number was not given, will stay on throughout 2014. So it's really not necessarily a whole lot different from what was planned until now. The only thing is what was planned until now had not really been specified in a whole lot of detail.
Now, we saw a very angry, very emotional Nicolas Sarkozy just last week following the killing of 4 French soldiers by the Afghan troops that they were trying to train. Is this announcement today a direct consequence of that?
Well, that was certainly the spark that